He had seen her gentle smile a few times. He had never witnessed an expression like this before. Realizing he had made things awkward, he felt slightly ashamed of himself. That's an interesting question, Lord Philip. It's a terrible shame, but I am lonely and single. Is that so? With your beauty, I assumed you would be inundated with proposals before you even said a word. Tee-hee. Oddly enough, I am not. That said, even if I were, I wouldn't know what to do with them. So I actually feel like things are perfectly fine the way they are now. I see. When they reached the door, he put his arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. He heard a strange creak and turned to look for the source of the sound. Is something wrong? Albedo asked with a smile, and the slight question in his mind slipped away. No, nothing at all. Now then, allow me to escort you. What could they see? Hilma was a little curious how these nobles dressed to the nines viewed this ballroom. First-class cuisine, first-class waitstaff, first-class furnishings, first-class music, and third-rate garbage nobles. Most of the nobles at this ball were freeloading third sons, or worse, the spares of the spares, disappointing and headache-inducing for all sorts of reasons. One look at their faces was enough to tell. Many of them, feeling liberated, wore triumphant smiles. Likewise, many of them were ablaze with ambition. To people like that, this ballroom was a place to satisfy their vanity. But really, this place was a feeding ground. The kingdom's noble society had been thrown into confusion. Even a few months after the battle with the Nation of Darkness, the scars were large and showed no signs of healing. Some factions disbanded, while others formed. Noble houses that had been at the top suddenly found themselves on the bottom. The kingdom's current chaos was a great chance for the nobles who hadn't belonged to a faction before. It was their last chance, really. If the factions reformed, they would be driven into a corner. This place should have been a giant feeding frenzy for them. They were like starving fish, trying to get the small fries in their bellies. Meanwhile, the small fries would probably be eaten in a single bite, without even realizing the larger fish's aim. Or would they notice it and manage to swim away? Perhaps some small fry nobles would take a bite out of larger fish and feast. After observing the ballroom for over an hour, Hilma had determined that there were no first-class nobles here, no one worth working with. But she didn't despair. If any first-class nobles could enter this dangerous ballroom unfazed, there was a good chance they were spies. Though she had rejected them during the invitation phase, Hilma didn't feel she had managed it perfectly. She was sure a noble from some faction had managed to infiltrate. She considered it amusing. Her report would have more depth, which would make her more valuable, so it wasn't a bad deal for her. Okay, was it about that time? An hour and a half had passed since the ball started. It was the appointed time. Hilma's true job started now. She was scared. Her arrogant attitude from earlier had vanished. A fear that the gentle word scared couldn't even cover welled up from the pit of her stomach. If she displeased them, she would be sent back to that hell. That thought made her want to flee at top speed. Of course, if she did that, she would probably be punished in a way that would make even that place seem like heaven. She had given orders to kill more than once as a member of the Eight Fingers, and she had even given orders to make people suffer before their deaths. But any of her orders seemed downright merciful compared to the treatment she received from that monster. Hilma, the voice from behind, startled her. When she turned around, it was the most idiotic man in the ballroom. Is something wrong? No, Lord Philip, it's nothing. Hilma hid her true feelings beneath a smile. She was annoyed with herself for getting caught off guard by such a piece of trash. Lady Albedo wanted to take a 10-minute break, so she was looking for you. She has been talking with nobles non-stop, so it's only natural that she would want to rest. Understood. I'll show her where she can relax. I see. Then maybe I'll go with you. What was he talking about? Hilma was truly disgusted with him. Or had he sensed something? Wary, she kept up her act. I think it would be better if you refrained. Why? I've been at her side all this time. I don't think it would be strange for us to go together. Now she knew he really didn't get it. In other words, he was a moron among morons. He was an imbecile. He had none of the manners or sense that a noble should have. If a man who is not a woman's husband accompanies her to a room to rest, that gives everyone an opportunity to gossip. Oh, but I was going to come right back after escorting her. Even so, I understand your concern as her host, but as the one providing the venue for the ball, I can take her to the resting area. Yeah, he seemed like he wanted to say something, so Hilma waited in silence. Really, she wanted to tell him to spit it out already, but he was the host. She couldn't be too rude to him. What do you think I would have to do to marry her? Huh? His question made her forget her act. What did you just say? About a way for me to marry Lady Albedo? Hilma wanted to scream. Was this nitwit for real? But she reined in the urge. She didn't think his stupidity was the bottomless kind. According to the information she had gathered, this woman was the right hand of the King of Darkness. She was essentially the Prime Minister. A low-level noble from the neighboring country, couldn't he possibly have these kinds of designs? She would have been less surprised if he had asked how to marry Princess Rena. I mean, I managed to gather all these nobles together, didn't I? I think I am on her level, don't you? Hilma clamped her hands over her throat in spite of herself. Though she knew none of those things would slip down it, the fear and anxiety from being shredded up made her do it. Trauma wasn't the end of it. How would she feel if she heard this nonsense coming from this not at all attractive man? If the blowback fell only on Philip, that was fine. But if any malice was turned on her, dark hell might await her again. Surely that's going too far. I've heard she's the Prime Minister of the Nation of Darkness. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the equivalent of a duchess here. But the Nation of Darkness only has one city. What does that have to do with it? His remark disparaging the Nation of Darkness gave her goosebumps. Certainly, its territory wasn't so large. Even including the Katsi Plain, it wasn't vast. But wasn't its military mightier than anyone else? No matter how much effort they poured into trade or diplomacy, relationships between nations were decided by brute power. No matter how vast a nation's territory, once it was defeated, its land would be stolen. If this idiot couldn't even figure that out, how could she make him understand? Hilma's thoughts went around and around, but she didn't have an answer. Common sense and stupidity existed at odds with each other. In the end, she gave him the conclusion. It's impossible. There is no chance of you and Lady Albedo getting married. We have a pretty good vibe going, though. Didn't you notice, when we entered the ballroom together? Hilma was shocked. Is that what he was thinking? Is he planning on tempting people to his faction by claiming he has the Nation of Darkness' backing? This guy is a complete idiot. Give me a break. Don't provoke her. She felt something bitter rising in her stomach. At the same time, she wanted to give this fool a taste of the sensation. Our chat here has gone on a bit too long. I'll escort Lady Albedo, so I'd appreciate it if you would stay here and entertain your guests. When you put it that way, I suppose I have no choice. Take good care of Lady Albedo. She didn't say, you should have known that without me having to say anything. Instead, she bowed her head slightly. Then she went directly over to Albedo because she was sick of listening to that blockhead. Albedo was speaking with some nobles. Normally, Hilma would have read the atmosphere and watched for the right moment to say something, but she was tired from interacting with the idiot, so she spoke right away. Excuse me, Lady Albedo, I thought perhaps you would like to take a rest. Yes, I hate to be rude, but I think I'll rest for a little while. Albedo followed her out of the ballroom. I feel sick. Hilma looked over her shoulder at the voice. She wondered what she would do if the lady really did feel unwell. But when she looked, she saw her wiping at her shoulder with a handkerchief. Their eyes met. That nasty man put his hands on me. Only one man is allowed to touch me when he desires my body. That was awful. That brainless man. Her teeth ground audibly. She, who always wore that gentle smile, openly expressed her disgust. It must have been really bad. Hilma wasn't sure what to do. Was it all right to talk to her now, or was she preparing to punish someone? What's wrong? Let us chat. So sure, Hilma responded, internally terrified. I understand how you feel, Lady Albedo. Oh, then would it be impossible at this point to get rid of that fellow and find a new one? If you wish, Lady Albedo, I could find you a new toy. Albedo's mouth opened and then closed. This repeated several times. It must have been an offer tantalizing enough to put her at a loss. Either way, hell surely awaited Philip. He would reap what he had sown. Don't worry. I was merely complaining. He made an impression on many nobles at the royal cocktail party with his stupidity. In that sense, it would be a shame to trade him out now. If he's acting that way on purpose, he might be more fun than I thought. But there's no way. Hilma remembered the conversation from earlier. That delusional man had said he wanted to marry Albedo. How would Albedo react if Hilma told her? She was far too scared to bring it up because it was possible it would start a fight. He hasn't done anything, yet he thinks himself special. What an outrageous idiot. Yeah. Eventually we'll bring him crashing down to earth. This body belongs to Lord Aints. He needs to be punished for touching it with his filthy hands. Then, without saying anything else or meeting anyone along their way, Hilma led Albedo to the entrance of a certain room. Before the door, she wanted to sink to her knees in relief. How stressful it was to accompany her alone. She was the right hand of the king who ruled over Jaldabaoth, but she would never be permitted to slump like that. Hilma mobilized every last bit of her physical and mental energy. At the same time, she promised herself that when this was all over, she would spend an entire day sleeping. This way, when Hilma opened the door to the room, the men sitting inside all stood at once. They were as bone-thin as she was. They were her colleagues. There were 5 Eight-Fingers Division chiefs plus their leader, for a total of 6. In other words, they were her most reliable friends in the world. They had once quarreled, but that thought couldn't possibly cross their minds anymore. Having learned the connection between Jaldabaoth and the Nation of Darkness, they were all in the same boat. Until this country was swallowed up, until they were liberated, they would have to work together as slaves. When her friends, with whom she felt even intimate, set eyes on the embodiment of fear that was Albedo, they bowed deeply. Their shoulders shuddered with a terror they couldn't fully conceal. Albedo had Hilma close the door. She then took a seat in the highest quality chair in the room. This chair had been placed in the most honored position. Neither the men nor Hilma made to sit down. Instead, they stood at attention while waiting for orders. All right, I have orders for you. First, I want you to transport all kinds of materials to the Nation of Darkness. Understood. It will be our pleasure to offer them to you. The Smuggling Division chief answered without a moment's hesitation. How could he possibly hesitate? Now that he had been summoned, all he could do was agree to any and all orders. The chief of the Smuggling Division had lost a ton of goods during the Jaldabaoth disturbance, so he didn't have power over the Merchants Guild any longer, but his position was still secure. That was because, when he did business with the nobles fighting the Nation of Darkness, he had done all his deals in cash up front. The merchants who had permitted payment after the fact were now all struggling. Perhaps it was more accurate to say his reputation was once again on the rise. That's not what I mean. Sell them at the appropriate prices, and with the money you make, buy food to prepare the kingdom for the food shortage that is sure to hit. There's a lot of food the kingdom army wasn't able to move. Let us have foodstuffs be handled under a forward contract. Lord Aints has already begun producing large amounts of food for that purpose. Given how many workers they had lost, the future she described was sure to come to pass. Understood. We'll have the merchants get started right away. These are what we want the most. Make sure to have them bring plenty in the first batch. He reached out reverently for the bag she tossed onto the table. Yes, Ma AM. And how is the magic item research going? A different person answered with zero delay. My humble apologies. He bent over so hard he whacked his head into the table. The sound was surprisingly loud. We've enlisted the help of the Wizards Guild and are investigating as we speak. Please give us a bit more time, or if you don't mind an in-progress report, I am happy to give it. Sure, that's fine. Work as fast as possible. Oh, and another thing. Have you decided on your new members yet? If you have, I need to take them back and baptize them. New members were to fill the empty seats, the positions of new division chiefs. Recalling what baptism entailed, Hilma felt nauseous. She desperately tried to keep her expression steady, but her colleagues all had the same look on their faces. The demonic baptism had broken their spirits and obliterated their will to resist. If any of them had been told they would have to endure it again, they would have burst into sobs like a child. Unfortunately, we haven't decided yet, their leader said. It was true, but it was also a lie. There wasn't actually any reason to appoint new heads. The missing chiefs were from the Security Division and the Slave Trafficking Division. Most of the latter deals were already done, so there wasn't much benefit to choosing a new chief. As for the Security Division, they weren't sure if it was even worth having one. Besides, the ones you've lent us are outstanding, so it might be a good idea to have them as chiefs. They were borrowing undead, and all of them were unbelievably strong. When they heard the 6 arms were dead, a group of mainly former worker riffraff gathered. One undead was sent in to control them and massacred a group of nearly 40 people without letting a single person escape. And there was another laughable reason: no one present wanted to make anyone go through what they had experienced. The rulers of the underworld put bounties on people like it was nothing. They didn't even wish a taste of their own despair on anyone else. Okay, one of them said. If the organization will function properly, then I have no problem with it. Do you have anything to ask of me? I don't mean to trouble you, but the skeletons you lent me are doing a fantastic job in the mine I am borrowing. I was wondering if I could borrow them a bit longer. Yes, of course. If you pay the fee, I'll continue lending them to you. Thank you. The man who spoke wiped the sweat off his forehead with a handkerchief. It was so wet, it had changed color. The most formidable thing about the Nation of Darkness was that it gave not only whips but carrots. The strong didn't simply steal from the weak. They wheeled and dealed like capable merchants, following the rules. In fact, as long as they didn't show any desire to rebel, it was like having an immensely powerful protector. It was incredibly comforting. Of course, when they actually stood in front of that protector like this, they wanted to flee in terror. But still now then, it goes without saying why I am here in person. I believe I've already said this, but you will cooperate with the Nation of Darkness as we absorb the kingdom. Gain as much influence in the outside world as you can. Understood? They all hurriedly bowed their heads. There was no way they could object to the kingdom being taken over. If those monsters wanted to do something, it would happen sooner or later. At first, they considered going to the Blue Roses, Drops of Red, and Ravenblack for help. But when they learned that the Nation of Darkness was so overwhelmingly mighty that even Jaldabaoth was under its control, they realized there was no hope. Their only choice was to bow their heads and wait for the end. Oh, right, Hilma and the others' shoulders twitched. There's one last thing I forgot to say. There's a magic item I personally want you to search for using your intelligence network. Send regular reports of your results on parchment to Albedo of the Nation of Darkness. I have no idea what it even looks like, but what sort of item is it? It's an item that allows you to control your opponent's minds. Mind control like a charm wand? No, I think it's something much more powerful. What happened? Are demons here again, or something? No, the representative from the Nation of Darkness wants to meet you, princess. That woman, yes, she is very beautiful. There was only one representative from the Nation of Darkness. Rena's question should have sounded strange. She wanted the maid to point that out, but she was so distraught, she gave a straight answer. Well, I don't care, thought Rena. It was the accumulation of these things that gave her the reputation she could use. These were all moves made in advance. Climb stood nearby. Rena heard his armor squeak. Perhaps he cocked his head. The innocent behavior of her puppy dog filled her heart with love. She guessed that he didn't understand why the representative had come to see her. He had seen them greet each other. He probably assumed there wasn't much in it for the Nation of Darkness to talk with the in the end, only decorative third princess. Rena smiled kindly to herself. The saying the stupider the child, the cuter to the parents was really true. Or maybe it was more like, even pockmarks look like dimples when you're in love. Probably both, because if anyone besides Climb had done it, the emotions that rose up in Rena would surely have been different. She was seized by the urge to gaze endlessly into his twinkling eyes, but she held herself back until she could coat him in sweet, sweet sugar. Why ever has Lady Albedo come to see me? Cocking her head was key. She knew from several tests that this annoyed someone who was in a hurry. In reality, tiny flames flickered deep in the maid's eyes. It was anger. At the same time, Climb's armor made a faint noise again. Perhaps he detected the maid's feelings and had an opinion about them. But the sound quickly ended. He must have gone back to stoically standing at attention. He was so cute. He was like a puppy unsure whether to step forward and defend his master. He must have decided that if Rena didn't notice, not moving was the better course of action. The maid was the daughter of a good noble household. If Climb, from who knows where, made some remark, it would get back to her parents and cause trouble for Rena. He trusted Rena so much. He must have been shedding tears inwardly. If only his family were more important, then he would never let this happen. Rena suppressed her desire to look at Climb standing behind her. The meddlesome maid had opened her mouth. I am afraid to say I don't know that much, only that she wants to see you. Well, Lady Albedo is a woman, so it's possible there are things she wants to discuss with a woman. Perhaps about makeup, she asked innocently, or more like brainlessly. May I show her in? Of course, Rena answered happily and then turned to Climb. Climb, my apologies, but this is going to be girl talk. Could I get you to leave the room? Understood. He was a bit disappointed, but it wasn't his choice to make. He didn't need to know all the complicated details as long as she would look at him with those pretty eyes. When Albedo entered the room, there was only one person present. Albedo had 4 objectives in coming to the royal capital. The first was to transport supplies. The second was to create an excuse to start a war. The third was to make some arrangements regarding a personal goal. And the fourth was to make a deal with the mistress of this room. No, deal wasn't quite right. It was more like giving her a reward. Without getting permission, she crossed the room and sat in the chair that was there. Then she spoke to the young girl who had taken a knee and was bowing. "Raise your head, all right." The girl, Rena, looked up. "UV performed brilliantly. Thank you, Lady Albedo." Oh my, seeing a girl entirely different from the one she had dealt with so far, her curiosity was incredibly piqued. This was the Rena she had heard about from Demiurge. Though she had betrayed her family, her blood, and her people, there wasn't a hint of regret in her expression.